So today I want to talk to you about a revolution that's happening in architecture. And it's not just happening in architecture, it's happening to all of us throughout our lives. It's a communication revolution. It's the phone you're carrying, it's Snapchat, it's Instagram. I'm going to assume that all of you know what I'm talking about, and I'm going to skip explaining that part. I'm going to skip to the part about how that's impacting architecture, and how, if we're smart, we can take advantage of it. And we can leverage this revolution to make better buildings, smarter buildings, buildings that speak to the public in a way that they never could before. So I'm coming at this from what I think is a bit of a unique position. I'm a practicing architect, a partner at Hollwich Kushner. It's a 40-person architecture firm in Lower Manhattan. And I'm also CEO of Architizer, which is an architecture, a venture-backed architecture startup that's building a marketplace that connects architects with building product manufacturers. And it's from this vantage point of the intersection of technology and architecture that I want to talk to you about this revolution. This is actually the culmination of a trend that's been going on in architecture for a long time. Architecture, as I think everyone in this room knows, moves pretty slowly on occasion. And I think that this trend has been evolving for the last 35, 40 years. So I'm going to give you a very brief architecture history lesson. It's going to be great. So I'm going to take you back in time 35 years, and I'm going to take you to a magical place, specifically, oh wait, that's my architecture firm, and there we go, there's New Jersey. Okay, so I'm taking you back to Jersey because I'm from New Jersey, arbitrary, but nonetheless. And 35 years ago, I was 5 years old, and I grew up in, that's me. The slide before this one, which, there we go, that's the room, that's my childhood bedroom. It's crucial that we start here because the thing about this bedroom, it's a lovely house and I love my parents very much, but between my bedroom and the bathroom that I shared with my sister was this balcony that overlooked the family room. And that's where the TV was, that's where my cool older brother hung out, and that's what I would have to pass every time I went to the bathroom. And every time I took a shower and came back in a towel, everyone would see me dripping wet, and now you know what I looked like when I was 12 years old. I was awkward. I was super, super self-conscious. So I hated that walk. I hated that balcony. I hated that room. I hated that house. And that's architecture. Those visceral, emotional connections we make to the places where we spend our time, that's the power of architecture. That's what this communication revolution is going to let us leverage in a much more fundamental way than we ever have before. It's not a surprise that we feel this way about the places where we spend our time, because on average, Americans spend 90% of our time indoors. Right? That's a huge amount of time that architecture is impacting us in ways that we don't even know. That makes us pretty gullible and really, really predictable, right? It means that when I show you a building like this, I kind of know what you think. You think democracy and stability and government. That's the Supreme Court building. But I know that you think that because that building is based almost identically on a Greek building that was built 2,500 years ago. This is a visual trick that we use. This is a trigger that architects use to get a predictable emotional response from the people who see and consume our buildings. And we've been using it for centuries. 300 years ago, we used it to build banks. 200 years ago, we used it to build art museums. Last decade in America, we used it to build houses. Here in Florida, strong, keeping the sea at bay. And this is really useful because building things, I think as everyone in this room will attest, is really terrifying. It's complicated, it's expensive, it takes a long time. Who wants to put their neck out on the line to try something new, to try something different? That's how we end up with buildings like this. This is, I'm always so terrified. The architect isn't in the room. All right. This is the Livingston Public Library in Livingston, New Jersey, where I'm from. And like, it's a totally nice building, right? It's red, it's got red brick, and it's got a dome, and it's got this round thing. And you can kind of guess what the architect told his clients. He said, this is going to tell the world we are rich in history and a colonial background, none of which is true, incidentally. And that's all fine, but it has almost nothing to do with what a library actually does today. The crazy thing is that the same year that this building was built, in 2004, another library opened on the other side of the country, and it looks like this. This is the Seattle Public Library. And the Seattle Public Library by OMA is about a new kind of place, a new public resource for a new age of media consumption. They call it a public living room for the city, a place to share information, to hang out, to redefine how we use a library. So like, how is this possible, right? Same year, same country, same building typology, two wildly different solutions. My theory is that this happened because architecture works on the principle of a pendulum. On one side, you've got innovation. And architects are constantly pushing for innovation, new technologies, new typologies, new solutions for the way that we live today. And we push and we push and we push until we totally alienate the public. We dress in all black. We go into mourning because we've got no choice but to go and engage those symbols that we know everyone loves. So we push the pendulum back, everyone's happy, architects feel like sellouts, and we start experimenting again, and we go back to innovation, and then back and forth we go for the last 300 years, and certainly for the last 35 years. So, 35 years ago, coming out of the 70s, Brutalism. You probably recognize this stuff. It was mean, concrete, dehumanizing scale, small windows. This is like really, really tough stuff. So by the time the 80s come around, Pendulum swings back. We re-engage these symbols, but we update them for the 80s. We add neon and we add pastels. We have a good time. We start to apply new materials. We take Chippendale armoires. We turn those into skyscrapers. Skyscrapers become these medieval glassy towers. Forms get big and bold and colorful. Dwarves grow to the size of buildings and swans sit on top of them. It's crazy. It's the 80s. So like, I think we all understand that. And we're all shopping in malls. We're all moving out to the suburbs. And out in the suburbs, we can build our own architectural fantasies. And those fantasies can be Mediterranean, they can be French, they can be Italian. Wah, wah. That's the thing about symbols. That's the thing about postmodernism. It's cheap, it's easy. Because I know, and I know that all of you know, this isn't Tuscany, this is Ohio. So architects get depressed. No offense to Ohio. We get depressed, and we start experimenting again. Late 80s, early 90s, computer-aided design, and we come up with something called deconstructivism. This is new forms, interesting compositions, crashing into each other, stuff no one had ever seen before. Architects are super excited about this. Nobody else is. And ordinarily, the pendulum would just shift back in the other direction. And then something magical happens. In 1997, this building opens. And this is the Guggenheim Bilbao by Frank Gehry. And this building fundamentally changes the way that the public interacts with architecture. Paul Goldberger, the architecture critic, said that it's the first time when critics, academics, and the general public are all completely united around a single building. Tourism in Bilbao increases 2,500%. The New York Times calls this building a miracle. So all of a sudden, everybody wants one of these buildings. LA, Seattle, Chicago, New York, Cleveland, Springfield. Gary's everywhere, right? He's our very first architect. But like, how is this possible? How is this possible? These are crazy forms. These are audacious, wild forms. How is it possible that these become so ubiquitous throughout the world? And it happened because the media galvanized around these forms. The New York Times galvanized around these forms. They told us that these forms meant tourism and culture. So every mayor in the world understood, these forms mean tourism and culture, I gotta have these forms. This phenomenon, the Starchitect phenomenon, happened to a few other architects at the turn of the new millennium. It happened to Zaha Hadid, it happened to Daniel Libeskind. But what's really interesting is that as media speeds up, this phenomenon starts to happen to the entire field of architecture. Because think for a second about how you consume architecture. You know, 1,000 years ago, you would have had to walk. Tourism happened. You can take a boat. You can take a plane. Media speeds up. You can see it on TV, read it in a newspaper. Until now, we're all architectural photographers. And the building has become liberated from the site. It's everywhere at once simultaneously. This means that the speed of media has finally caught up to the speed of architecture, because architecture can actually move pretty fast. It doesn't take long to think about a building. It takes a really long time to build a building, 2, 3, 4 years at buildings of this scale. In that time, an architect or a client will think of 2 or 12 or 20 other buildings before they know if that building they designed 40 years ago was a success or not. And that's because there's never been a good feedback loop in architecture before. That's how we end up with buildings like this. Brutalism wasn't like a 2-year experiment. It was a 20-year phenomenon. For 20 years, architects are building buildings like this, unbeknownst to us that everyone hated it. That's never gonna happen again. Because when you apply media to this pendulum, it starts swinging faster and faster until the difference between these two sides is effectively blurred. We can make instantaneous connections to new and innovative forms. In fact, we crave them. So let me show you an example from my own firm of a building that we finished a few years ago. We were hired to replace this building. This building burnt down. It's on Fire Island in a town called The Pines, a beach vacation town in New York. We proposed an audacious design, forms that were surprising to the community. It's a gay vacation resort, I should mention. That's why all the men are, that's why everyone's a man in the images. So we were nervous because our client was nervous, we're nervous, the community's nervous, so we created photorealistic renderings, and we put them onto Instagram, we put them onto Facebook, and we let people do what they do. Comment, like it, hate it, didn't matter. As long as they interacted with the building, as long as they reached out and expressed an opinion about the building, so that when the building opened and it looked exactly like the renderings, there were no surprises. This building was already a part of the community. When the summer came and the first tourists started to show up, this building really ceased to be a building. It expressed itself as a part of the community. Every one of these social media posts on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, was a way to short-circuit our collective memory. It was a way for my friends to tell me what to think about this building. I don't need the Greeks anymore to tell me that a building is this or that. I need my friends, this guy, contemplating this place, this building. I recognize this building without even going there. That's incredibly powerful. I was kind of vindicated last year, maybe a year and a half ago, when Frank Gehry and Mark Zuckerberg collaborated on the Facebook headquarters. They proved my theory. When Facebook opened up their new Frank Gehry designed headquarters in Mission Bay, they didn't do a splashy press release, big glossy pictures. They invited 50 Instagrammers to come and tour the building. And this was the public's first images of the building. So here we're looking at a complete reversal of the way that architecture has been consumed previously. This is unbelievable. I don't know if you can see the second comment. Hey, Mark, did you take this photo and can we have permission to feature it with credit to you? That's Time magazine asking an Instagrammer to use his image of a building. If you look at the comments, this is the way architecture discourse will be in the future. Oh, dude, you rock. We're expressing ourselves, and everyone is free to express ourselves about architecture. This shift means that the public is ready. They're ready for a different kind of architecture than we've been serving them, and it means that guys like me, architects, are ready to listen to the public and are ready to have that feedback loop so that we can start to serve them up things that they really crave, that they really want. It means that architecture like this is Mies van der Rohe, incredible architect, serious guy, is a little outdated. This is me and my partner. Architecture is luscious and joyful. These are the places where we spend our time. We have a good time making these places, and we want everyone to enjoy them. That was our feeling. I'm going to show you quickly 2 projects when we designed Pennovation, an innovation center for the University of Pennsylvania. Penn bought a new campus. They wanted it to be a center for innovation. This is what an existing building, an old DuPont paint factory that they gave to us and said, it's pure potential. Here's just enough money to make it into a laboratory building. What we convinced them was that entrepreneurs don't just need labs. They need the social and emotional experience of connecting with each other, potential investors, their colleagues, their friends. So we saved money on the labs where we could, and we added a program of a bar, a conference room, a cafe, and a pitch bleacher, a place to pitch your ideas, and sculpted it into a recognizable form. This is the building when it was completed last year. And the building is now a way to communicate outward to the world that Penn is a place of innovation, of cutting-edge research and entrepreneurship. But it's also a place that on the inside, with its rough finishes, with its over-exaggerated HVAC system, whatever we could do to tell the entrepreneurs that they should come in and make a mess and start experimenting, that it's a place where the future is being designed. So the garage doors on the first floor open up like a California garage where HP was started, where Apple was started. But our favorite part is the pitch bleacher, designed to get, like the indoor kids, all the entrepreneurs who they make robots in this building, to get them out, to get them talking, to get them pitching. So this is the glossy picture, but if you look on Instagram, you start to see this thing get messy and get used. And this is the shot. If you Google Pennovation when this talk is done, you'll see that it's filled with pictures like this, of people showing off themselves, showing off their ideas in the building. That's the power of architecture that media unleashes. And I like this shot. You can see his Penn Robotics shirt, so Penn really likes this shot a lot too. The last project that I just learned before I came here to talk to you is a project I can't really show you, so I'll show you some blurry pictures. But I think this is the future. This is really interesting. WeWork has a new product, WeLive. I think you had a speaker here from WeLive last year. We were asked to design WeLive 2.0. So WeLive 1.0 launched in New York as kind of cutesy versions of apartments. They were after something much more severe in its redefinition of the way people live. And what we thought was that this is an unbelievable intersection. This is where hospitality and traditional residential development merge. You should come and we should talk, come to New York, it'll be amazing. But I think what the potential is when you start to find the efficiency within the unit and you start to stack units, as we all do, the possibility is, and these were studies for the application and deployment of these incredibly efficient, tight little units, the possibility is to find the uniqueness even within an efficient system. And this was our proposal for a project in Miami that may still go forward, but hyper efficient and all the time working to create unique spaces, unique places to create those lasting memories and those emotional connections. Because I think fundamentally, the stakes are really high. You know, we're not just, with architecture, we're not just reflecting society, we're shaping society. We're shaping the places where people take vacations, the schools where we send our children, and the homes where we raise them, and the walk that they take from the bedroom to the bathroom. Thanks, everybody.